in a few seconds here. Okay, we're good. So let's switch. Do you want to share the notes document, Brian?
I can if you want me to.
Would you mind?
Yes, I would mind.
Ryan is always class secretary.
They say don't ask a question that you don't want to hear an answer to, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Now Marky is presenting to everybody for now. So actually, one item, if you can put up there, up at the top too. Here, yeah, perfect. So we were, or the originally scheduled topic, which is the flow extension mechanism. I mean, we should still hopefully have it, but then why don't we use the first part of a meeting to talk about how to get ONOS support OpenFlow 1.5. So Murat, do you want to just start off the topic and start the discussion?
Should I talk to you?
The mic is here, so that's what's fine.
Hi, this is Murat. In fact, for 1.5, what we did, we just enhanced the oxygen code for the for the 1.5. Now it has a 1.5 extension in the oxygen. And what we are thinking we want to use in the ONOS, but in the ONOS side, there is a couple of the change in the oxygen code, I believe. And we have to merge both of them. So I don't know what we should, or how can we, should we merge everything to the oxygen or the OpenFlow J, or should we merge the oxygen to code or our code base? This is the first, I think, we have to discuss, right?
Yeah, that's an interesting topic. So, yeah, we've maintained a fork of Loxy largely because we needed to, in order to repackage the bits. I think we've tried to upstream it. I'm not sure what the status of that is, but our goal has been to upstream our changes as much as possible, and then when we need stuff from Loxy, we just pull in and merge it.
Okay.
So we can merge the upstream changes into our fork, and continue to work that way. I guess the larger discussion is whether we want to move to an upstream only model, which unfortunately, I mean, I haven't been as involved in talking with that community, but upstream only works really well when you have a sort of good relationship with the upstream. So, or they're publishing stuff exactly as you need it.
Yeah, and also if we don't have any experimental stuff in our fork, we are not yet
ready to.
Yeah, I think we have a couple of the experimental parameters also, right, in the OpenFlow, because with the OpenFlow 1.5, I'm also working on another project to control the E-not-B devices in the LTE. So they will turn to forwarders, and we are also work on the M-cord to manage this. So to manage them, we also want to put some experimental parameters in the OpenFlow. I think we have to do in our code base. So in our first step, we have to pull the upstream, right, and merge to our system. Then I think next week I can create a couple of the PowerPoints. That's what I have to do for the 1.5 and how, for the lower layer and the southbound. And also we have to put, because in the 1.4 and 1.5 there's a lots of change in the OpenFlow. So we also think about what we can create for the intent state. In the northbound intent state and for the flow state, we should create 3 steps. And if you want, I can create a couple of the slides in the next DSC meeting. We can discuss what we are doing, what is new in the 1.5. Okay. But for the first step, we have to merge upstream into ONOS. That will be the big issue.
So the experimental parameters that you talked about, is there a plan to ultimately merge them into or submit them into the upstream?
For the E-Node side, for the LT management side, yeah. In fact, this is just the discussions. We are just creating proof of concept.
Okay.
If it's accept, then we push the ONF team. So this is the wireless management,
Okay.
and we just test it's working, and we try to push with ONOS power to ONF stream. Yeah. That's all for me. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So the ONOS fork is in Garrett.
Okay.
So if we go to Garrett ONOS project .org project list ONOS Loxy.
Okay. Okay.
So in here we just have the master. So
okay.
we'll just need to merge in.
Okay.
The upstream.
I will merge and
Yeah.
test, and after that.
There may be some conflicts that need to be resolved.
Okay. Perfect. Okay.
Yeah, that should be easy to do. And if you need permissions on the repo, let me know.
Okay. Thank you. That's all. Nice.
Okay.
Okay, that sounds like plan.
So the what I'm doing on this Google Doc is red means action item.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Perfect. So here, let me also edit something here. While we're still waiting for the presenter, he's probably having technical difficulties here. So let's talk about some of the TSC meeting changes if you're done with the OpenFlow stuff. And the idea here is to as part of the initial response to the community feedback that Patricia Dugan collected for us kindly. The thought is to start taking some fairly immediate steps to address some of the, I guess, accessibility and transparency. I guess we could call them issues, really. And then one of those specifically was TST meetings. The idea here is that, first of all, there's issue with the time zone. We hold it at, normally meetings are held from 3 to 4 afternoon in Pacific time, which is not at all convenient for Europe and definitely not for across the Pacific, like in India, for example, or China. So the thought here is as follows: rather than we definitely, like for example, this example being this meeting, we definitely are open to changing the time to fit the speaker's need or the audience needs, and so we will try to get in the habit of doing that more often. First of all. But recognizing the fact that you can't please everybody all the time because of the 24-hour, what's going to be convenient for some is going to be inconvenient for others. The idea here is to start using documents like this one to track the discussion, and at least loosely at a high level, and especially to track decision points and action items. And then open the document for comments so that those who couldn't attend the meeting in person can at least comment on the decisions and actions after the fact. And this document can then serve as a nexus for the discussions on the specific topics. And those discussions can also be held over email chains, but the issue is email threads, which certainly ubiquitous. They're sometimes more difficult to track the decision. So So my thought was that even though some of the discussion may happen over email, we can go back to this document and address some of those comments here. And then this can then act as a set of raw materials for other more formal, collateral such as design documents or wiki pages. So I'll be changing the process for scheduling these meetings so that there will be an additional column for these type of documents so that they're easily accessible for everybody and they know what to look for them and how to comment. And so that's just one initial step.
So Thomas, I have a question.
Yes.
So I guess I don't understand what you're saying you're going to do about setting meeting times. Are you going to have a regularly scheduled meeting that's earlier, or when you say you try to accommodate both the speakers and audience, what do you really mean by that?
Okay, yeah, so I talked with David about this yesterday. So we're going to keep our regular scheduled time, but depending on which topics are queued up, we will change the time. We may change the time from week to week. But the idea is that if we leave it completely open without a fixed time, then I fear that this will dissemble. So the idea is to keep a regular time and then have exceptions as needed. That's the idea.
Do you know what that regular time is going to be?
Well, for now, we're going to keep it at 3 to 4, but I think what we will probably do is move it to earlier in the morning so that it's by default more conducive to European partners and potentially even East Coast, right? Because even 3 to 4 is not really good for East Coast.
Yeah, I would say probably early in the morning, like the CS2 time, 9 a.m. PST is probably better because it's good for the Americas and it's good for Europe. And
That's exactly what I'm thinking, yeah.
it's really good
Yeah,
for
it's like a
except
no
for
man's
PST,
land, right?
Yeah.
It's good for the Pacific.
Yeah, so if you want to have it later, probably like 4 or 5 PST is better. And then probably earlier, that's good for Asia. And then, 9 a.m. is good for most other people.
Yeah, well, I think we'll do that. We'll take example from this CST. But I think it's important to have a regular time.
Yep, agreed. Okay.
So let me see if Shashikanth will be able to make it, because he's still on.
So one issue with using Google Docs, which is great, is some people in China might not be able to access it. So if we are using this as a place where everyone can go and look at things, then that might be a problem for some of our.
Yeah, I talked with David about this, and the same thing with Google Hangouts. But I guess I'm not. The Google Hangouts is one thing. We can certainly talk about if there is a better alternative. I'm perfectly open to that. But for the Google Docs, that's something I don't think we should be addressing. And if there is members in the community like Huawei who are interested in mirroring the contents of the YouTube channel or the Google Docs to some other China specific counterpart, that's perfectly fine. But I don't think we should be bending. I don't think we should be bending to the Chinese firewall, frankly.
The other thing that can be done with Google Docs is they can be quote unquote published to the web, where they'll generate a static page for you for a document.
Yeah.
Once they're published, we could mirror them.
Yeah. Of course, then you lose the interactive nature of it, right?
So people that want to look at it's not a snapshot per se, because it's live updated. So if you just had a node that was relaying that page,
I see.
that wasn't under the auspices of Google's IP range, then that relay node could just fetch and serve. But I don't think we should
have to set it up. Or,
I don't think we have to do anything to set it up. We would just need to probably have a folder that was well known, and then I think anything published in that folder gets
Okay.
some
The same doc is. Yeah.
some predictable URL. But
But you know, I think this is something that's a secondary thing. I don't think that should be something that's left for somebody, for members of community to address.
that's fine.
And for the meeting notes, I have a suggestion. I think we also create a finalized date, or because if anyone writes any comment who didn't attend, so nobody will see that, right? So we somehow have to finalize date or set something so anyone can see and get these reviews. Yeah, this was nice.
That's a good point, because someone's just going to write. You have a week to continue to write stuff in there, but in general, no one's going to look at it.
Nobody, yeah, yes.
So if we just go back and see what are the deltas.
Yeah, that's correct. So
Mark notes as final when discussion has ceased. So we just go back and review.
Yeah, that's a good point.
yeah,
Okay, so we're still waiting for Shashikanth. He's conversing with me on Slack. I'm hoping he will be here shortly. So while we still have some time, also another item related to the feedback and also intersecting with the TST is visibility to the roadmap. So currently, okay, good. Shashikanth is here. So we can postpone the discussion on the roadmap later to make sure that we have enough time for the flow extension mechanism. Hi, Shashikanth.
Yeah, hello, Thomas.
Hi.
Hi.
So we have a number of people from Menlo Park online in one room, and myself is actually running Menlo Park right now. So if you have any presentation materials, do you want to share? Do you want to share your screen?
Yeah, I'll share.
I presume you know how to do that in Google Hangouts.
Sorry?
Do you know how to do that in Google Hangouts?
I will just share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yep. Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to discuss about supporting multi-valued flow types in ONOS.
Okay.
Okay, this multi-valued flow types is similar to OpenFlow rule, where in OpenFlow it supports only single value, but this multi-valued flow types can take multiple values for a flow type and with logical operators. The format can take like this. Initially a flow type, and it contains operator and value, where each operator can tell what kind of logical operation can be done on the previous value. Hello, Thomas. Can you hear
Yes.
me?
Yes, we can hear you. Keep going.
Yeah. So as an example, here I have given some two examples for IP Pro 2, where we can mention multiple values with operators. Here, this IP proto can take two values, either protocol UDP or TCP. So this logical operation we can provide in one single flow type. I think this we have discussed in one of the previous PST. Okay.
Okay.
Similarly, we have some more format for to support route policy distribution in BGP. We need to add some more classes. So to support this feature, we want to add a few classes. That class can take multi-valued flow types with logical operators. So currently, we have added a new API bundle. In this new API bundle, we have added extension data classes, where this extension data class support operators plus value, and extension classes we have added in drivers extensions. So we just wanted to check whether this way of implementation is okay, or is there any other better solution that we can go ahead with. Like as an example, we are using like this. We have defined extension data class in common flow. Hello?
Yeah. Yeah.
Extension classes we have added in drivers extension, but extension data classes we have added under new folder common inside that complex flow. So this is a complex flow IP proto which we have added in extension data which in common. So this way of implementation is okay, or do we have to take some other approach? Do you guys have any better solution for this?
Okay, so I'm still looking at this. So let me think about this for a little bit.
Yeah, so I think the problem is that there is classes that want to be used both in the driver and in the application. So they need to be available somehow in some common way. And the problem is, where exactly should those classes live? We don't want to put them in the ONOS API because they're specific to a particular application / protocol. But we can't. If we put them in the driver, then the application can't see them, and if we put them in the application, then the driver can't see them. So.
Yeah, so it's certainly okay. This is more of a question to you, Jana. It should be okay, right, to use the extension mechanism like this, right?
Yeah. From the extension mechanism point of view, that's okay, I think.
Okay. So the question here is more of a philosophical one here, because there's a number of technical solutions to it, but it's more of a philosophical one. Clearly, natively, we want to discourage or even disallow tight coupling between the driver implementations or even the model specific and application, right? Now, if a particular application like this has a need and potentially a want to create an extension where it is coupled itself to the underlying mechanics of a specific protocol or specific device, I guess it's perfectly fine that they do that, but I don't think that as a general approach, this is something we want to encourage. So, as far as making sure that the application has visibility to both, I'm not sure why it needs to be in a common, on a core common. It could be part of the application, no?
These classes we need to access from application and as well as in SBI, extension data classes.
Yeah, because you're piggybacking on, you're basically putting in a third bundle which is visible from both. And then where that bundle lies is completely irrelevant, right?
Yes.
So right now you're putting in ONOS core common.
Not in ONOS core common. We added in ONOS common. New folder we have added inside ONOS, inside that common.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I would discourage that, at least especially at the top level. I think this is something that can live with the. Remember, ONOS applications are essentially, at least the on-platform applications are essentially just core extensions. And whether they are drivers, whether they're traffic steering applications, it doesn't, or UI extensions, it doesn't really matter. They're delivered in forms of bundles. So you can structure your application in a way where the third-party functionality is delivered by either both of the two pieces, or you structure your application, your applications not just as drivers and as the application itself, but also as a sort of a shared base. So you have application A, which is the driver. You have application B, which is actually some traffic steering logic, right?
Yeah.
And I'm suggesting that you introduce an application C, which is basically just libraries.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's the general approach. The application C is its own bundle that both A and B can depend on.
Exactly.
The question is just specifically where exactly does C go? It doesn't really seem to fit in the application section. It doesn't really seem to fit in the driver section in terms of the structures in the code base.
In this particular case, I mean, put it in.
Yeah, I guess.
I don't know. I wouldn't. I think it would be fair to put it in either place, whether you put it in drivers or whether you put it in application. My initial leaning would be to just put it in the application.
Yeah.
Basically an API that you're basically setting up an API, private API that will be used by the drivers and by the application itself. So I would put it in the application tree.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
But definitely not. I would not be polluting the root, especially the top level tree. That's not okay.
Yeah, I think if we don't pay attention to it, common can be anything, right? So we want to avoid using common for arbitrary things.
Yes. Does that sound okay, Shashikanth?
Sorry, there was a lot of disturbance. I could not hear properly. Can you just summarize?
Sure. So the suggestion is, instead of placing it up at the top common,
Okay.
instead place it in an applications tree.
Okay.
Okay, and have the because it's a bundle that's required by two different applications.
Yes.
You have two choices. You can either have both applications bring that bundle, both the driver and the top level application, or you can structure it as three applications. One application is sort of a base application which just brings the bundle but doesn't really do anything active. Brings the APIs, basically brings the extensions. And then you have two other applications, one of them being the driver, and then the other one being the top level application which does the traffic steering.
Okay. Okay.
That would probably be more. That would probably be better anyway. That way you have just three components.
Okay. This new class, new API bundle should be as part of application only. You mean to say that, right?
Yes. Yes, because it's very specific to.
We need to maintain dependency of that app with our SBI part also, correct?
Correct. Yes. So the base which brings the API extensions.
Okay.
would be dependent, would be the target of dependency from the drivers and the top level application.
Okay. I got.
And then you can use the ONOS applications dependencies to indicate that when somebody loads either the driver or the top level application, it will automatically loads the library app.
Okay. Okay, Thomas. I'll
All right.
just try the solution.
Yes.
Thank you.
Ah, okay. Sorry, I misunderstood. I thought there was another question coming. Okay.
Okay.
So if this sounds good, then you can probably just resubmit, restructure it and resubmit the review in a separate patch, right?
Yeah. Yes, Thomas.
All right. Is there anything else?
That's it. And Satish wanted to join to this meeting. I'll just inform him.
Ah, okay.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. So we'll have notes on this, and then he can probably comment after the fact. And we'll, clearly we'll have to do a better job at disseminating the meeting times.
Sorry, is it for me?
So is there anything else that anybody had?
Yeah, Satish is there. I'll just ask him to join this meeting. I'll just share this link to him.
Oh, I see. Hi, Satish.
Hello. Hi, Thomas.
Hi. So we're actually almost finished. I mean, we're just about ready to wrap up the meeting.
Yeah. Actually, I didn't got this link. I was in the YouTube link. I was just monitoring what you guys are discussing. So yeah, actually, I thought of I'll discuss one more point also along with this in this meeting. So
Yes.
is it okay, like if you guys have some 10 minutes of time, can I have some, actually I want to discuss about the traffic engineering properties, whether to keep in resource subsystem or we can think about something else. I want to discuss about it. So if you guys are free for another 10 minutes, maybe I can present on that.
No, go ahead, by all means.
Yeah, sure.
So I'll let you lead the conversation then.
Yeah, I'll share my desktop.
Okay.
Yeah, you could see my desktop.
Yeah, I'm marking you to present to everybody. So yes.
Yeah, this is regarding the traffic engineering properties, like what we learned from the network in the legacy network. We have some problem in where to manage this information in the ONOS side. Okay, so we all know with the MPLS network, we have traffic engineering capabilities that are basically integrated with the layer 3, and which is used mainly for optimizing the routing of IP traffic. So not just based on the shortest path, we also need to consider the other parameters, traffic engineering parameters. One of the example is maybe the bandwidth we want to the path which is having the fixed bandwidth, for example 100 MB or something. Or we can also have the other traffic engineering parameter constraints while creating the path. For example, I want to go with the links which has the properties of color. For example, the color ID is X. So I want to choose only the links which is having the properties of color X and with the bandwidth X, Y. So we want to choose like that. So this is one of the this kind of traffic engineering has to be taken care in the MPLS network. Okay. So So if we basically, when we go with the normal IGP protocols like OSPF and ISIS, we won't be in those protocols in the network, in the existing network. You see, like it's basically go with the shortest path algorithm. So we don't want to go with that. So we want some other intelligent, some other traffic engineering capability based path computation. Okay. So generally, if you see in the network, these traffic engineering parameters are basically configured by administrator on the devices on the network. And during the path computation, whether the computation algorithm is in the network or if it is in the controller, so this path computation elements uses these constraints to compute the path. So which validates basically along with the traffic engineering properties and compute the path and set up the path in the network. So these are some of the traffic engineering parameters which I just highlighted here. For example, like bandwidth is one of the parameter, and we have color administratively configured. So we can tag each device or links with some particular color. And we have SRLG. It's basically shared shared risk link group. So this is basically for the when the link goes down, like the backup link. So backup link don't want to follow this. I mean, should fall under the same risk group. So we want another risk group. So basically this was tagged with the SRLG, and we have something called cost. Cost is basically the link cost. So these are all the administrative properties which existing in the current network. Okay. So these are the properties which we need to learn in the ONS side also. So these properties currently we are learning with BGPLS, or we have other SBA protocols like TCPLS. So we are OSPF or ISIS, all using all these protocols, we learn topology information along with the traffic engineering properties. Also, we have some kind of device capabilities. For example, some of the devices are segment routing capable, and some devices are not capable of having segment routing, and some devices are where you can have the capability of pushing the labels and handling the labels and label stacks. So this information is also we learn via these protocols like PISA protocol. Okay. So the current problem is like there is no specific subsystem in ONS core to maintain this information. So the traffic engineering. So, and one more thing is this traffic engineering properties are dynamic in nature. For example, yes, can be some other control unit which configures the network. For example, some administrator can directly connect to the devices and change the color or something. So these updates keep coming to the controller, and we need to keep updating the information in the controller as well. So this is the current solution which we initially adopted some time back. So initially we thought we'll use the resource subsystem, so to manage these traffic engineering parameters, and from provider registers these traffic engineering parameters along with the device and port. Okay, so later during the computational logic, we use the constraints, we pass it as a constraints to the path service, and using path service we compute the link weight using this properties which we have set in resource subsystem. So later, like the issues like we got some objections from Shoshimu also on this, like some of the parameters he agreed, like color, SRLG, and bandwidth he agreed like this can be a part of resource subsystem, but some of the parameters like cost, cost, and capabilities he feel that it doesn't exactly fit into this subsystem. Okay, so this was the like we are stuck on this point, and later we thought okay we can be use something like annotations. The problem with going with annotations is it's not mutable. Like since as I told, like these properties are dynamic in nature, so we can put everything in the annotations, so annotations cannot be changed. So this is the one of the issues we faced with going with the solution 1. So and solution 2 is like we thought about the new subsystem, like which is something parallel to the resource subsystem, maybe can named as inventory subsystem. But the only issue is like the inventory subsystem, it will be like almost 90% similar to resource subsystem. Even if we have if we come up with a new subsystem, like still it will have a device and port which will be acting as a parent resource, and with that we'll be adding the the resources, the properties which you learn from the network. So this way, like a lot of code will be duplicated, and again we'll end up like the issue like code duplication issue and code bloating issue. So we don't want to go with this also. So the only difference between the current resource subsystem and the new subsystem, which we thought was like the new some of the interfaces which we require for the new inventory kind of subsystem is something like we want to match, like the tagging which we make, like color and all, we want to match with the subsystem which you want to make. So if you see current resource subsystem is basically like we either register, first we register, then after that we either allocate or release it. So, but we want something here like whether it matches with this property. For example, device X, whether it has this constraint. For example, color red. So whether the device has red color. Basically, we want as kind of property to over here for the resource subsystem, which we want to duplicate in the inventory as well. So due to the lot of code duplications, we thought, okay, I think this adding the new subsystem doesn't make sense. So one more solution, what we are thinking is like extending the resource subsystem. But when we extend it, maybe like we need to add a new interfaces, like what I mentioned, like matching the property. Instead of allocating and releasing, it will be mostly like matching and checking whether it matches or not. So maybe in our auth computation, so along with the constraints, we match against these properties what we have in the network. Okay, so so based on these three, so what we think is like our preferred solution would be like, we thought we'll go with the extend the resource subsystem. Okay, so though like one of the reasons behind is like these are the three reasons which I mentioned over here, which made me to think like this is the better solution. One is like if you see in our current NMS, network management system or element management system, so the resource and the inventory, most of the cases is generally like clubbed together as a single database, which is maintained together. And also, though we use the T attributes in transition network, I think somehow like in OpenFlow network also, I think these are the this can be useful maybe in the future, like where we tag the devices with some particular properties and we want to control like the path which we want to compute it. Okay, so one more reason is this avoid a lot of code duplications. These are the reasons like what I prefer like this solution. But currently, since this was not concluded, so currently what we have gone with this is like we had a limitations like no other external entity can change the network properties. So that way the annotations or like the traffic engineering parameters we use is fixed and it is not changeable, and we are using annotation time being. But I feel like going forward, so it is better like to come up with a good solution where like these are traffic engineering parameters, since its nature is like changeable, so it's dynamic in nature, better to come up with some new good solution where we can remove this limitation as well, like from the network. So these are my thoughts, like I want to know like what you guys feel like, what would be the better way to going forward on this.
So, so the mutable annotations aside, I mean, that may be something that we may eventually consider, but whether or not and when that's going to be available, I'm still not sure that that would be necessarily the good use of this, because we have network configuration subsystem, which is intended to host information which is injected by the administrator. And so some of the class of this, some of the information that you need to track is certainly belongs to that. So have you explored using the...
Yeah. What you're telling is like instead of network administrator configuring on the devices, you are suggesting like let him configure on the controller, then we will manage it. Yeah, I agree on that. But most of the cases, like what happens is like since some operators or other people, like since they are already having this NMS or EMS which they are already connecting to the device, so they are something like they want to control the network both by themselves as well as by the controller. So some cases they want to use the controller to get the benefit out of it, and some cases they want to directly connect with the devices in the network and change the properties. So that way, like what happens is like he changes in the network devices, but he doesn't populate the same information in the controller. So that way we lose information. So one scenario is like that was the reason like we have some protocols where we learn this information what is changed over the network to the controller as well.
Okay, so here the thing is, I mean, you agree that this is somewhat of a transitive usage, right? Because ideally, the controller is a controller, and then the changes, the edicts flow through it to the environment. In this transitive usage, you actually have the controller observing the environment and surmising control
Yes.
edicts from the environment. This is completely wrong direction, right?
Yes, I do agree. Like when you talk about, yes, when you say it's a controller, so I do agree. Like any change in the network should go via me, like via controller. So if you want to have any change in the network, you come to me. I will provision for you. Yeah, that is the right approach. I do agree. But the thing is, like, since the if I am starting up the new network, yes, I do agree. Like we can do with this, but the issue is like the current operators, like where they are already invested on this, they have already the NMS and EMS
Sure.
which manages this
No,
network.
I agree with that. It's a transitional
Yes, yes,
use
yes.
case, right? So I have a suggestion here. So what I think really it's a bad idea to couple these edicts with the sensory information. So our providers such as Device Link and other providers, which are the ones that synthesize the immutable objects, the objects that are immutable once they enter the core, I think we should leave them be that. Basically, leave the sensory data and channels to deal with telemetry and sensory data to be just that. However, as a transitional workaround, if you want to have an NMS issuing configuration edicts to the devices and then have ONOS learn about those edicts from the environment,
Yep.
rather than polluting our existing telemetry and sensory channels with this information, come up with a piece of software that also observes the environment and then essentially synthesizes the edicts and inserts them from the top of ONOS. Meaning you have a separate component on the side that monitors the environment. I mean, in your case, it could be even the BGPLS providers can double that as that, right?
Yes,
That they
yes,
do not send the information to the core via the provider services, but instead they send the information to the core through the network configuration channel.
Oh, you mean to say like BGPLS directly use the network config and come via that?
Yes. I mean, it's BGPLS observes not just the environment, but it also observes edicts.
Yes, exactly.
Now, these edicts are manifested on the devices themselves. It's clearly not ideal, but it's okay. And then to reflect, basically to mine the information that the network operator has already indicated and deposited in devices, we basically scrape that information and insert it in form of edicts using the network configuration subsystem. Then the rest of the applications and the rest of the system can remain completely unmolested, essentially, by this. It's a very isolated solution.
I got it. I got it. So let me summarize this. My understanding on this, like yes, the edict part which we learned from BGPLS. So instead of directly populating to the core via annotations or via some other way, so you are suggesting from the SBI, like in case of BGPLS directly talk to the config network config service and push via network config service, and whoever subscribe for this, so those applications directly get it and use it in the ONOS, right?
Correct. Correct. And then this way, the applications that you develop on top of this model don't have to be aware of this coupling at all. Because the traffic engineering you're gonna do based on what the environment looks like structurally, what the environment looks like in terms of current utilization, which is basically, so the structure is the graph. The utilization would be the availability of resources, and the policies and sort of and usage overrides would come from the network configuration subsystem. And all of these three and potentially more aspects of input would be combined by the traffic steering application to properly shape the traffic flow.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, correct. Okay, okay, this currently what we are doing is like currently we are putting in annotations, but we are keeping a limitation that NMS do not change any of the properties of it in the network. So since we are targeting this for GoldenEye, we are going with annotations time being. We are not changing any of these properties. We don't allow any updates. But maybe going forward, maybe we will be using the network config service, and we will allow the changes as well.
That's fine. If you wouldn't mind, just put some annotated piece via comments, or potentially if it's a visible, or potentially even through deprecations, just indicate that this mechanism may potentially go away. That way, you discourage its use beyond the immediate.
Sure. You mean to say to add and deprecate, or to add and to do something kind of note that this will be deprecated?
Either. Right? If it's something, let's say, if you're putting annotations, let's say in a public view.
No, I think we won't be putting in a public view because maybe because this will be used only by one of the application like PCE. So maybe one idea is we'll replicate it. We won't put in public, because we don't want to others to misuse it. So maybe in the next one we'll be using the config service, and we'll remove this part.
Okay, in that case, just some lightweight to do, or indication that this is a transient use.
Yeah, sure.
Is there any other comments from the TST in Menlo Park?
So Satish, you mentioned there are different types of things that you observe, right? I mean, you talked about bandwidth information that you want to use. You talked about
Madan, bandwidth we'll still use the resource only. I think that is the best place. I think that we will not use it, the other mechanism, because bandwidth is the what currently the resource subsystem also is the main continuous resource is bandwidth only. So for that we'll still go with the resource subsystem.
Right. I think my comment was in general. I think we want to use the right services, even though your traffic steering application might end up talking to 3 or 4 applications, for it to make a decision. I think the information should go into the right services.
Yes, agreed. Yeah, Madan, I agree. Yeah, thanks. I understand your point.
So I have a question, and that is that even though this is maybe a legacy use case of traffic engineering, is there something that can be taken from this and applied forward? Because there's going to be a number of traffic engineering applications that come up for SDN environments. And do we feel like we have all the subsystems and mechanisms in place to be able to support? Like if this were, if a traffic engineering app was being written for a new network that maybe didn't have PG, so forth, would we have the right subsystems and mechanisms in place to support that, or are there some that we should be thinking about adding?
So at least for this particular use case, I think we have subsystems that they can use. So I don't think we are creating new subsystems for this particular application.
Right.
But
it's kind of the first. I mean, we haven't spent a lot of time on use cases around traffic engineering for new network, right? So I guess what I'm wondering is, what can we learn from legacy and applied towards where we're headed, if anything? And maybe the answer is nothing yet.
Yeah, I think maybe this is the first use case, I guess, at least that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
But at least once we have a sampling of few, we can see what common things exist that we might want to abstract out and then make available as a subsystem.
Yep.
That can benefit future use cases.
And Madan, I have one question. Does OpenFlow doesn't have any such traffic engineering parameters? Because the same thing, I'm sure that will be hold good. This will hold good for the OpenFlow as well. Like if you go for the critical network, for example, I have 2-3 switches in, for example, maybe the seismic zone, like maybe Japan. So I don't want my backup path also should go via the same the switches in the Japan. So I'm sure like if something goes wrong there, so my backup path and the primary path, anyway, I know that both is going to go away. So is there any mechanism where I tag that, okay, this device is like this color? Generally, we use SRLG for this in the legacy network. So is there any tagging in the OpenFlow where you tag like this guy, this devices, this links belongs to this SRLG group, and the other devices links belongs to a other SRLG group, so that I'll have an exclusive path which doesn't have any shared links.
But why would it be? Why would it need to be part of the OpenFlow protocol? I mean, this is a state or computation performing by the
maybe
controller.
yes, I understand. Okay, I got it. I was missing that part because yes, in case of OpenFlow, this will be morely like configured to the controller directly, so controller only knows that. Maybe the network doesn't know about it.
Yeah, I mean,
So with OpenFlow, clearly they've added the ability for provisioning backup paths, right? I think it was a 1.1 edition.
Okay.
So the device can automatically switch, but which way, in which direction it should switch is entirely up to the controller to decide.
Yes. Yeah, I understand. So, yeah, that was this little difference, like when I talk about the legacy network where we learn from the network, and yes, this is the right approach for SDN. Like only controller knows about it, network doesn't need to know about it.
So, Satish, one of my concerns with this general, like, these types of constraints is that, like, when you have an administrator that is configuring manual properties on manual devices, you're going to have problems. Like, this direction of having people manually define shared risk link groups, blah, 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 like, what needs to happen is you may have administrative policy. This policy may come in the form of deciding like how various links or devices are related, but like we're not going to have administrators in an SDN network that are tagging particular links with certain colors. Like I guess my concern here is we want to automate. Like traffic engineering needs to move in the direction of automation, and where there are constraints, we should talk about what the constraints are that are missing, but I don't know that we need to go back and look at every single constraint that's used on networks today, because a lot of this stuff just doesn't make sense in an SDN network.
Yes, an SDN network, it doesn't make sense as a network, but still I feel it holds good at controller level. Because controllers still need to know, like, okay, there are some group of devices which have some particular properties. There are other group of devices which belongs to some other properties. I think still we require such kind of differentiation, at least when you compute a path. Actually, when we go in the core networking, I am sure like this kind of properties is very much required, because these are the very key properties which when they design the network solutions, so they take care of all these things such that the network will never be interrupted. Like always they'll have that 99.999 lifetime. So to achieve that for that 99.999% liveness, I think these properties is very mandatory at solution level, network solutions level. So either yes, in the legacy this is taken care of the network, but in SDN I think this controllers should still have these constraints, and still need to tag these devices maybe through the config service. Instead of administrator going to the devices directly, administrator may be configuring it to the controller. Maybe the orchestrator or somebody also can be possible to communicate with the controller and configure these things. But what I am trying to tell is like this is very mandatory to achieve that network liveness, like without breakage.
I mean, I'm not sure if this is the only way you can achieve like that.
Yes, I do agree. This is not the only way, but the concept I'm talking about, I'm not going very specific over here. So general concept-wise, I think this concept is still required in a controller as well.
So in general, these kind of like optimization decisions, make sense when they come from the top, right? And gives you more flexibility for how to move around things. But if the devices are pre-tagged and pre-colored with whatever parameters, it constrains what you can do. And if your overall decision making has to be constrained by those things, I think, in my opinion, that results in a less ideal solution than someone defining the policy at the top and giving freedom to the controller or the application that is running in the controller to decide how to group things, how to steer traffic, how to pick up backup paths and things like that, rather than the devices or links being configured with certain properties.
Yes, exactly. Like I'm not telling that yes, we are going and configuring for the to the devices. I'm just telling like you give the administrator gives the information to the controller about that. Okay, this devices belongs to this category, or this resources belongs to this category. So when you compute, for example, when you give an intent for host to host intent in our current thing, I think currently also I have seen some places where you guys are using like explicit path or something. I remember there are some of the things which is already being used, but I see not like every techniques which you use in the legacy is not completely being used. So maybe like I feel still that gaps. I think we can address it.
So my main concern here, and I think, is that maybe less than an ideal approach of using legacy hardware or partially SDN solution, but not 100% SDN solution, such as what Satish described, right, where you have legacy hardware configured with legacy NMS solutions, and then the SDN controller has to work with that. That's sort of the scenario. My main concern here is that a short-term use case does not have lasting impact to the architecture of the SDN controller, and which is why I suggested that we do not pollute the existing sensory and telemetry channels, and instead come up with a temporary solution that works within the confines of the long-term architecture to address a temporary problem. That was what I was after, and I think whether or not this is an ideal deployment use case, clearly it's not, but some people may want to use it and they have very good reasons to use it. My concern is just to make sure we defend the cleanliness of the architecture.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Anything else? Like any other queries?
So sorry, I'm muted because the phone is going off. I don't think I have anything else, and so hopefully this answered some of your questions, Satish. And
Yeah, sure, Thomas. Yes, I got it. Yeah.
So I think we can call it a day today.
Sure. Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
I will make sure that the notes are visible nicely on the wiki page, and comments and additional discussions welcome. But hopefully these suggestions for moving forward will be good enough for you guys.
And also, would it be possible for the presenters to send maybe PDFs of their presentations to Thomas so he can put a link to them as well?
Sure, I'll send you guys.
Yeah, that'll be great. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll send it to you. Yeah. Thanks, guys. Yeah, thanks, Thomas. Bye. Good night.
Bye. Thanks, Brian, for taking notes.
Yep.
See you later. I'm gonna stop the broadcast now.